This is Niceguy Eddie, and you're listening to Rainbow Radio. In My Humble Opinion is coming up next.
My guest tonight is a transgender artist, activist, photographer, and poet, and pulled one of the absolute ballsiest stunts I've ever seen in terms of challenging a public servant to stick to his principles. It's my pleasure to welcome Pamela Raintree. Pamela, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you.
Now, with regards to what I mentioned, obviously I'm very late to the party here because this happened back in, January?
January of last year.
Oh, my God! So when was the last time somebody contacted you about that, wanting to talk about that?
About 6 months ago.
Okay, all right. So it's still kicking around.
Yeah.
I guess for those who may not have read about it or who forgot about the article or the story, I guess give us a little bit of a brief synopsis about what brought this on and what happened and what you did.
Well, what had happened was the City Council of Shreveport, Louisiana, had passed what is called the Fairness Ordinance, which is a nondiscrimination ordinance for housing, public facilities, and employment.
Okay.
And there was one holdout on the vote, and the guy had repeatedly made this just blatantly homophobic rant about the Bible not allowing him to even associate with homosexuals, and blah, 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 blah. It was a big mess.
Yeah.
Well, they passed the ordinance despite him.
Right.
And the very next council meeting, he put forward a proposal to repeal the new ordinance.
Okay.
And I had heard his rant often enough and the responses often enough because this had been something he had done for other issues.
Oh, sure.
I knew that no one was going to challenge his religious arguments on it, and all the other bases were covered.
Right.
And it would just be a rehash.
Yeah.
And I also know that he made those arguments because religious arguments are considered sacrosanct, that you're not allowed to argue back.
Right, and just so everybody understands, this is in Louisiana. So this is in Louisiana. This is and that's a pretty red state.
Louisiana.
Yeah, and that's a pretty red state. That's not exactly a liberal bastion. I mean, outside of New Orleans, that's a pretty conservative area.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But, my thinking is that if people want to introduce religion into politics as polity, then I have a right to challenge. And that's why we keep religion out of politics, is so the government doesn't have a voice in religion.
Absolutely.
But if they're going to put it in there, I'm going to attack it when it's attacking me.
And you certainly found an incredible way to go about attacking it. What did you do?
Well, he basically was referring to an Old Testament passage that requires people to stone homosexuals to death. He didn't quite quote it correctly, so I quoted it for him and then offered him a stone to kill me with.
Right.
Kind of hoping he wouldn't.
Wait, and that wasn't, you did not bring a small stone. That was a pretty good-sized rock.
Yeah, it was a nice-sized little rock.
About the size of a softball. I mean, it was not a pebble.
No, it wasn't. It was probably about the size stones that they would have used to kill people with.
Right.
But I did make sure that I put Jesus' reference on there. I wrote it with indelible marker, John 8:7, which is where Jesus said, "Whosoever was without sin, let them cast the first stone."
Oh yeah. Well, I got to tell you, you were a woman after my own heart. I have a brick here because I've been using for years the saying that hit you in the head with a brick or deserve to be hit in the head with a brick, whatever. Mm-hmm. And on one side of the brick is written, "In case of abject stupidity," and then on the front of the brick is written "Apply to Head." so I love it. I love it. You actually wrote the passage on the rock. That's great. Now, yeah. So what was the? I mean, okay, aside from the fact, because I've Googled you, of course, and just done my homework a little bit. I mean, first of all, there was a huge response. I know a lot of articles written about this initially.
Yeah.
But I mean, did it in your immediate vicinity, in your hometown? What was the do you feel that you accomplished your point? Did the councilman change, or did you get some public support for that? How did that go?
I got enormous support. It was a local reporter who made the story go viral. She was actually a Fox News reporter, which is
no kidding,
blew my mind.
Yeah,
but she had connections to a national internet outlet in California. So as soon as she filmed the episode, I guess you could call it,
right,
she contacted her friend in California and said, "This is going to be big.
Yeah,
you got to run."
Well, it's a great visual. It really is.
Yeah. It went viral, and it's still got on Tumblr. There's over 700,000 comments about it.
Wow.
That's on just one website.
Right.
And
here I am calling you a year and a half later to talk to you about it, so it's not going away. It's still around.
No, it's still there. I think it's because it showed people that you can argue this religion stuff.
Absolutely.
And it holds no water. The whole religious argument is just hogwash.
Right. Well, it was funny because I have, and the show's airing this Sunday, but I had a guest on the other night who was he basically said that he was gay. And he says, well, I take from the Bible what I want to take from it. And I kind of answered that by saying, well, yeah, so do they.
Exactly.
And I think you proved that. I think you really demonstrated that point. So, well, the other aspect of it though, because when it did go viral, I don't know how stealth or hidden or private your life was prior to that, but certainly anybody who heard of you for any reason at all, heard of you for this and knew you for this. Did you give that a second thought, or had that changed anything about, did you have any regrets about, oh my God, maybe I don't want to be this well known?
It didn't occur to me that it would gain that kind of notoriety.
Okay.
I did expect it to make the local newspapers or something.
Sure.
Especially when he withdrew his proposal very quietly.
So this did have that had a tangible effect.
Oh yeah, it had a tangible effect. I'm not sure what that effect was.
Well, I mean, if he withdrew, I mean, I don't know that he probably still quotes the Bible from time to time, I'd imagine, but.
Well, the very next day he was quoted in the newspaper totally disagreeing with me and holding up his own BS.
Right.
And so.
Well, but the ordinance was withdrawn, or the repeal was withdrawn.
But the law is still on the books and still enforced, and it's a fairly decent law, except for a religious belief exclusion, which means that it's ineffective.
Right. So that applies to more than just, say, strictly a church.
Right.
Okay, so that could apply to, the pizza parlor, the cake bakery, the.
Right. If they have a religious belief that they shouldn't serve homosexuals, then they don't have to. So anyway.
What is wrong with people? Seriously. What is wrong with these people?
I have a lot of long theories on that, but I don't really know.
God.
But anyway, getting back to your question,
yes,
I wasn't terribly concerned about coming out in public because I have been a public figure for many years.
Okay.
I started activism in Houston, Texas back in 1989, and
as gay or as trans?
At that time, I wasn't out per se.
Mm-hmm.
I was just a person in the gay lesbian community doing activist work.
Okay. I was going to say, because Houston, Texas, wow, that you're braver than I thought.
Well, I was recruited by Ray Hill, who is a very famous activist down there in the gay community, and he got me involved. I was looking for community at that time. I was just coming out to myself.
Okay.
And so he got me involved, and I was going to the bar circuit, registering voters and knocking door to door, that sort of thing, stuffing envelopes. And
so this is old hat to you. You've been involved in this for 25 years going on, more.
A little over.
Yeah.
And at the time of the incident in Shreveport, my activism, the public part of it, was winding down. I still do a lot of personal counseling. Well, I don't know that you could call it counseling. I talk to people who have trans issues. A lot of them are parents whose kids have just come out and they don't know what to do.
Right.
So I steer them to where they can get help and whatnot.
I would call that counseling, whether
they're okay.
Right. I mean, whether or not that's licensed counseling or not, I would call that counseling. Yeah, sure. So then.
No, I can legally do spiritual counseling because I do have one of those mail order ordinations.
So in other words, you were facing down. You're facing down this Bible quoting councilman as an ordained minister.
Yes, actually.
Oh my God, you're getting cooler and cooler by the minute. I love you.
An honorary doctorate in theology. That cost me an extra $25.
Oh, how have I not had you on before now? This is awesome. I love it. So so for $25, you can buy a doctorate. How much does it cost to become an ordained minister? Online,
well, the whole package was $100.
See, I've so got to do this. I'll win every abortion debate, LGBT debate, anything I can get into. This is all I can say. Hey, I'm a minister. You can't argue with me. Oh my God. That is funny. So basically, when people are making these claims, it means they spent $50 online. Basically, if they, unless they know what they're talking about, unless they know their stuff, they spent $50 online. That's great.
Well, most of these people don't realize what they're talking about.
Oh yeah,
they've never read the Bible, and I have.
Right.
I grew up in a Pentecostal family, and I was in church almost 7 days a week.
So, so Pentecostal family. So that's a pretty good segue into what I want to ask you about. Now, as you were coming out, transitioning, etc. I mean, what? First of all, because we're going back to 1989, we're going back to the first Bush era at this point. What what time frame are we talking about in terms of your personal journey, if you will? What kind of, because it's a different world now. I mean, so when are we talking?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, the time frame was, I was just coming out to myself in '89 and got involved in an organization called Tri-S, which is a very clandestine group for heterosexual cross-dressers.
Okay.
And they didn't allow transsexuals or gays. And they were grooming me for a national position in that organization.
Okay.
Made me president of the Houston chapter, which went really well until my spouse at the time informed them that I was not just a cross-dresser, that I was in fact transsexual,
right, and
not even eligible to be on their board.
Now, why did she do that? I mean, I don't know. I'm just picturing like there was this big argument and she just decided, I'm going to get you. So what happened there?
She and I had a lot of arguments over the years over my gender issues.
Okay.
And we did eventually divorce.
Right. And that's such a, it's such a, I can't say tragic because I can't speak for anybody that's in a situation and how they might feel, but it's such a common story, whether gay or trans or whatever, just coming out of, all of this homophobic and transphobic nonsense that the the very people who are trying to defend the sanctity of marriage and defend this institution of marriage, they're creating a lot of really bad marriages. I mean, I don't say that in a judgmental way. I say that in purely pragmatic terms.
Well, the biggest problem is that they pressure people to get married.
Yeah.
Who shouldn't be getting married to the people they want you to marry.
Right. And of course, really, if you're going to go back to, anything prior to a month or two ago, really shouldn't be married, I guess is a perfectly good way of putting it, because the law wouldn't allow that. So, but yeah, I mean, the pressure to hide that or to deny that, and a lot of, well, that was the other thing that my previous guest, Aaron Paul, predicted. He said, you watch, now that they have gay marriage in all 50 states, in the next 2 years, the divorce rate is going to just skyrocket.
Oh, no doubt.
And I said, yeah, that's another thing they'll blame on you guys. Look at what they're doing to society. They're destroying society. Look at the divorce rate happen.
Yeah.
With no self-awareness whatsoever, they will say that. Oh,
yeah.
God. So, all right. So what? Again, I guess getting back on topic. What time frame are we talking about then? So, 1980s. You're coming out yourself. Early 90s.
Early 90s. I got a divorce. I had a stroke, and in 93, I started to transition.
Okay.
And I had a stroke, and that threw me off of. I reverted back to my old life, which was dreadful. That's what probably caused the stroke to begin with.
Huh.
But at any rate, in 96, I resettled in Shreveport, Louisiana by accident. How do you settle
somewhere by accident?
I was driving through Shreveport on my way to anywhere. Didn't know where I was going exactly.
Okay.
And got caught in an ice storm. That was January of 96.
Oh,
and
I remember that ice storm. That hit us as far as Virginia.
The roads in Shreveport were closed for a full week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
I remember that.
When I got there, I had $1.60 in my pocket.
So
and
you came prepared.
A tank of gas, and I decided, well, if I'm going to be stuck here anyway, I better find some work. So I picked up a job, and when the roads opened, I said, well, I better keep the job until it plays out.
Right.
And one thing led to another, and I lived there for 18 years.
Oh, jeez. So you hear that, guys? If you run out of gas in Shreveport, you have just moved to Shreveport.
Yeah. And
wow.
it turns out I really like Shreveport. It's a nice place. I just had issues with the VA there, and gang violence is getting really bad in that area.
Louisiana's a beautiful state. I mean, I don't care for the politics, but I love the people. Love the food. Oh my God. And it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful state. A friend of mine got married down there, and it's really, it is a nice part of the country. But yeah, it's just weird, I can't get past the politics, and all these nice people, and I'm just thinking, how can you vote for these assholes?
God. Well, it's assholes voting for them.
Well, but it's nice people too. That's what I don't, or at least it's nice people on the surface. I don't know.
Yeah, superficially they're nice.
Yeah, that's true.
The culture is where you put your best face forward. You are white.
It's a veneer. There's a veneer of manners and politeness and yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, and but yeah, that's true. There's some fakes. There's a lot of fake smiles.
Case of, well, bless your little heart means screw you.
As soon as you hear that, you're about to hear the most vile thing ever somebody could say. As long as the heart is blessed, you can say whatever you want about that person. Well, bless her heart. She, it's not her fault she's ugly, but she doesn't have to leave the house. It's just like whatever they come up with, as long as the heart is blessed. So, as you were coming on transitioning, now you mentioned Pentecostal upbringing, so I've got to ask you what the response was from friends and family at the time.
Well, my dad disowned me when I was 17 when this first addressed by my family at home.
Wow.
When I announced that I was going to transition way back in the 90s, my mother barred me from her house.
Oh, jeez.
And basically, I lost contact with everyone in my family except for one sister and my mother, who she kept a relationship because she wanted to convert me back to the faith.
So she maintained a relationship, but not out of any not out of any particularly positive motivation.
No, it was strictly so that she could try to manipulate me.
Right, and I take it
standard.
I take it that now that was never reconciled, or has that been?
No, never reconciled. Both of my parents passed away without reconciling that.
Right. Wow.
After I transitioned, and I began the actual transition in '97.
Okay.
When someone gave me a box of estrogen packs, I put them on and was instantly addicted.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm always stunned that is because the argument from the religious folks, from the right, from the opposition, it always centers around this idea of mental illness or the fact that it's in the DSM and whatnot. But of course, they've never read it. And, if you look at the symptoms of depression and anxiety and self-loathing and low self-esteem, all of that, it's amazing how many times I hear it's not treatable the way that major depression would be treated, for example, but estrogen, a hormone of all things, suddenly everything is right, and it's like, how could you hear that time after time after time after time, and then sit back and just say, oh, it's just a choice, so they can feel better about themselves. And I'm like, can you be more arrogant, more dismissive? It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And you still see it. I mean, the world has changed, but that attitude is still very prevalent, unfortunately.
Yeah, and in my case, there's good science behind explaining why I turned out trans. I was a DES male in utero. My mother, DES is, I don't know how you say the scientific word. That's why they use the acronym.
Right.
But it's a female hormone that they were giving to women to prevent miscarriage back in the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
And they have found that a very high percentage of the males who were exposed to that in utero have turned out to be transgender.
Right. But of course, we can't blame big pharma, and we can't blame the chemical industry. So we're going to blame transgender people.
Exactly.
Because that's that's who's going to bear the brunt of that, of course. My God. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't have a scientific explanation for myself.
Yeah.
Of course, it doesn't apply to everyone.
Right. Well, and it's not like it's required anyway. It does. I mean, if you're arguing with a religious person, it's like, look, I mean, what do you want,
Yeah, people don't have to prove to me that they were born Republicans for me to accept that they're Republicans.
No, I'm sorry. I don't buy it. You choose to be a Republican. Actually, there is some science there. Believe it or not, there are studies that do show that certain in utero stuff predisposes you to being Republican. There actually are studies that show that. Yes, exactly. So now you mentioned. I was going to ask you about professional implications, but you did mention coming into Shreveport with $1.60 in your pocket. So I'm guessing the job probably, or the career probably at the time probably wasn't much of a consideration then.
No, it really wasn't. I had been a professional sign painter in the computer industry, sign painters helper. And out of Houston, there were 3,000 sign painters looking for a job in Houston, Texas alone.
Wow. There's just not that many signs that need painting,
Well, there are that many signs, but they're being done by high school kids using computers now.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and I spent a lifetime learning this highly specialized craft, and all of a sudden it's a worthless.
That's obsolete
knowledge.
Yep.
So, But when I got to Shreveport, I picked up work. I went to house painting for a little while and wound up as a desk clerk at a hotel. Mm-hmm. And the owner of the hotel had no problems with me transitioning. She was just desperate for someone to take the desk job so that she could get a break. And it turned out that she died a few months after I hired on.
Oh, wow.
And the manager who was left in charge was flamboyantly gay.
Oh, okay. So you're probably figuring secure job security there. Yeah, okay.
But a lot of the residents there did. It was a residential hotel. A lot of the residents had trouble with it.
Okay.
And one of the worst was he classic redneck, hates gay, got caught in bed with one of the sleaziest guys up there.
So closet case. I mean, basically, he was
another
self-loathing gay.
Self-loathing and takes it out on everybody else.
Right. I mean, you know what? You could be so sympathetic for them. I mean, you really could. But my God, you've spent your entire life going out of your way to be an asshole. I mean, what?
Yeah.
God. Oh my God. And that's what I'm hoping goes away more than anything else as we, as we do progress now and as this does become, normal. I mean, it's not seen as an aberration that people don't feel this need to hate themselves so much. I mean, I can't stop anybody. Nobody can stop anybody from hating somebody else. I mean, that's an American tradition going back 200 plus years. But I mean, but God,
that goes all the way back to Jesus.
Oh yeah. But I mean, but to hate yourself like that. I mean, that's what I'm hoping. Really, that's what's going to bring about change. Because because only then will people really appreciate just how. I mean, nobody knows. There is no reliable number for how many gay people and how many trans people and how many, and I don't just mean to name those two groups, whatever. I mean, intersex and asexual and there is no reliable information for how common that is because there's this pressure to conform, to be what society wants you to be. And it's ridiculous.
I've been studying gender issues since I was in high school back in the 1960s.
Okay.
Because, when I finally had come to terms with the reality that I was female, which until puberty, I was adamantly certain that I was going to change like all the other girls did. And then puberty kind of convinced me otherwise.
So this is going right back to, you're aware of this right from the start, basically.
Oh, yeah. I first knew that I was different at age 4.
Wow.
When I was confronted by my parents and informed that I was a boy. And I'm like, what the hell? How'd that happen?
Wow. Yeah, and of course, at the tender age of 4, you're consciously making a choice to be who you are. You're choosing this dangerous and controversial lifestyle at the tender, well-informed, well-educated age of 4.
Yeah.
God. Oh my God.
Age 4 occurred to me that I would want to grow up to be transsexual and have people sit at me and cuss me and threaten me and try to kill me and beat me up.
And it sounds like Shreveport has been a very mixed bag because obviously there's the hotel manager, both of them. But yeah, again, conservative area. I can only imagine what you've experienced over the years.
Well, I've lived in the Deep South my whole life. From Savannah, Georgia to Houston, Texas. Tried Van Horn very briefly.
All right, so you've been all over the Deep South, and obviously for some part of your life.
And
very aware
that was really one of the better places I've lived.
Shreveport.
Yeah. Shreveport is it's a mixed bag because of Barksdale Air Force Base.
Okay.
Air Force personnel tend to be much more liberal than the other services.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because they're so much better educated.
Huh, okay. Interesting.
Air Force is a high-tech military, and that requires education. Education brings enlightenment.
Huh.
Unless you're a Bush or a Gendel or something.
Right.
But so there's a real mixed bag in Shreveport. There's a lot of conservatism, but there's this artistic community up there that's just phenomenal.
Right.
A lot of poets and very liberal thinking people.
Right. And that's, I mean, you mentioned the art and the poetry. You do a bit of that yourself, because I've seen your Facebook page.
Yeah. I've been a poet for quite a while. I've been doing art all my life.
Aside from sign painting.
Well, in the sign painting back in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, that included a lot of mural painting.
Oh, that's true,
especially on bars. And during the disco era, I probably painted 150 murals inside of discos in black-white paint so that they would fit that culture.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
My dad was in the sign business, and he did all the lighting in discos. He designed their light shows for them, and I paint the murals to go along with that.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Fun time.
Right, and anybody, I mean, check out Pamela Raintree's Facebook page, because you got a lot of imagery up there, photographs, some really cool sculptures. Yeah, lot of great stuff. Now, I guess just getting into some general stuff, because I see a perverse sign of progress, and that is that in the wake of the Supreme Court settling gay marriage, and I think starting about, it doesn't even seem like it was a year ago. It seems like within the last year, the Republicans and the right in this country seem to have come to the realization that gay marriage was a lost cause. They were going to lose it. It wasn't even going to be a winning electoral issue for them. And they immediately, they changed their tack. They started going after transgender people. And they started going after these with bathroom bills and whatnot. But it's interesting because, yes, there hasn't been anything positive to come out of that, but the conversation shifted. Things that that mainstream America was not talking about or even aware existed even 2 or 3 years ago are now being talked about. Even though they're being talked about in a negative way, they're being talked about. Right. And I wonder how you feel about that. And if you think, I mean, some of my guests have said they think that will backfire on them. What do you think?
They're having the Fred Phelps effect.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy somebody other than me brings him up.
So outrageously obnoxious about this, it is revealing the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are really morally corrupt.
Yeah.
And that they're just being vicious.
Yeah.
And people are seeing that, and they're doing more for the trans cause than Caitlyn Jenner.
Right. And it's interesting. See, I'm so glad you mentioned Fred Phelps, because I have said, and I've never gotten in trouble for saying this, and people know what I mean when I say it, but I say that nobody has done more for the cause of gay rights than Fred Phelps and the Westboro Baptist Church. Yeah. They have done more good for the gay community than any army of activists ever could have, by just, showing people just how ugly and how unprincipled and just how raw that hatred is on the other side. And, even if you're indifferent or even slightly against the cause, you're going to look at them and say, I don't want to be on their side. I mean, whatever they're for, I got to be against it.
And I have used that to full advantage by pointing out to people, well, you belong to the same kind of church he does.
Right.
And they very quickly, oh, no, we're not like that. Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, maybe you're not holding a sign, but if you're giving the same message, yeah, you are.
Well, yeah, but it's forced a lot of those people to clean up their act. And you now have the mega church evangelists that, gays are okay.
Yeah, I mean,
they're not going to heaven, but they're okay. They can come to my church and give me 10% of their income.
Oh yeah, they'll take your money. That's what you mentioned, Caitlyn Jenner, and that's kind of what and she came out and there was this great interview, and it really was a great piece, and yet I swear 30 seconds of it, even to this day, is still stuck in my head, and that's her coming out not only as trans but as a Christian conservative Republican. And I'm like, do you have any idea what those words mean? You don't have, I basically, I take the same.
I've known in my years hundreds of people in the cross-dressing and trans community, and I do count cross-dressers in the trans community, even though they don't want to belong with us.
Right. Well, and some people in the trans community don't want to count them either. But yeah, okay. So
the vast majority of them really are conservative. And Christian.
Oh, God. I guess, and again, it goes back to, you take from the Bible what you want. I think with politics, people just get really optimistic about, as long as my team wins, things will be okay, without really realizing that politics isn't baseball. You don't just pick a team and root for it. You gotta, there's a platform, there's issues, but, it always surprises me though, because you have the log cabin Republicans, you have other groups that, the Republicans and the churches, sure, they'll take their money, they'll take their support, but they won't take them. They won't really take them, and they won't take their cause, and they won't do anything for them. And it does make me wonder. I guess I can't fault anybody for being, well, I can, because I'm not myself, but I don't fault anybody for being religious and finding something positive of that in their life. But my God, you spend your life in a church which is condemning you. And causing everybody around you to condemn you, and in some cases causing you to hate yourself. And I always wonder how someone comes out of that and says, "Oh, hey, there's an LGBT-friendly church over here. Let me try that." Like, didn't you have enough of this? I mean, I know it'll be a little different, but still.
I was in that position for a long time. I grew up Pentecostal. I believed all of that. And I also believed that God just hated me and there was nothing I could do about it. And it did drive me to suicide. I've been suicidal 3 times in my life. I've only attempted it once, but I've been so close.
The thoughts and
and I was looking for my self-esteem and the acceptance of a deity that now I realize doesn't even exist.
Right. Although to be fair, if you had come to a different conclusion, you realize that it's not the deity that they're saying it is.
Exactly.
I mean, there's so many, or I should say others have come to that conclusion. And again, I'm agnostic myself. I don't practice religion. I think it does more harm than good, net, but, I don't take away from anybody who finds something for themselves in it. Just don't, don't push it on me, and I won't push, my disbelief on you. But, unfortunately, somebody has to tell that to the people running for Republican office.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I have my own personal beliefs that tend to look a lot like a cross between Taoism, Buddhism, and Native Americans' Good Red Road that came out of a mystical experience that I had in a Pentecostal church for gay people.
A Pentecostal church for gay people?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what a mass would sound like. You know what? I swear to God, I would go and I would give my 10% for the week just to hear people jumping up and shouting confessions. I would just to hear what that would they say. Oh my God. Wow, I didn't know. I know.
It was mostly a lot of self-affirmation.
Okay, I gotcha. I have met, and I was at a Pride event last week where I talked to, I believe it was a Methodist or Lutheran church, and you see a lot of LGBT-friendly Methodist and Lutheran churches. I have never heard of an LGBT-friendly Pentecostal church. Wow. But I guess it comes down to interpretation. It comes down to what do you take from it.
And I've been to several of the very charismatic fundamentalist gay churches.
Fundamentalist gay churches. I'm not worldly enough. I need to get out of my state more often, because again, you speak of things that I had no idea even could exist, let alone did exist. Because again, Lutheran, Methodist, Methodist can mean anything really. Lutheran is a relatively liberal well, it's basically liberal Catholicism. That's how I've always thought of it.
Yeah.
But when you take fundamentalism, when you take the sort of more Bible literalist I dated a fundamentalist girl in high school who was not allowed to date Catholic boys. And it was like, okay,
Right.
wow, I'd never heard of that before. This was in Connecticut. This was in New England. So it wasn't like, again, it wasn't like in the Deep South where that might have been more common, but it was like, that was new to me. And yeah, you think of the strictness and of the mindset. Yeah, I can't even imagine a fundamentalist gay church.
Yeah, very, very puritanical mindset and very Old Testament.
Right.
They pay lip service to the New Testament, but they're very Old Testament and rule oriented.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Except that again, and this is what I love. It's like there's a website. I think they compiled 603 laws from the Old Testament, and it's all the don't wear mixed fabrics, don't eat shrimp variety type stuff. And you always love how their answer for 598 of those are New Testament, but the one about gays and the one about, men dressing in women's clothing and the one about, anything that they can vaguely connect to sex or sexuality or gender identity, those we're going to keep. But we're going to throw away everything else because New Testament.
And even the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, which I researched that, and it had nothing to do with homosexuality.
Oh, right. It had to do with an overabundance of heterosexuality.
Well, what it had to do with, according to the three other passages that make reference to it, is pride, inhospitality, and idolatry.
Right. Yeah, true. Yeah.
Which here we worship money. That's the bottom line.
Oh, no question. Yeah, we put in God We Trust right on our currency. I mean, it always shocks me that it's liberals that are trying to remove that, not Christians.
Well, yeah, because we put that slogan on to God,
right? I mean, but it's just like the Christians want it there, and I'm just thinking, like, if you knew anything about your own religion, that should offend you. You shouldn't want that. That should offend you. Oh, God. Well. Yeah, because, according to the Bible, they're not supposed to have any graven images. Right.
Which, every bill there is has the picture of a president.
Right. It's a graven image. There's no question.
That's why Jesus, when he was asked about taxes, the money that they were talking about had Caesar's picture on it, and he said, well, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. He didn't say pay the taxes. He said, give all that back. You're not supposed to have it.
Right. Wow. I mean, and it swings both ways for me. I mean, I'm definitely separation of church and state, but it goes both ways. I don't need to change. Yeah. In fact, there's a small part of me that perversely wishes the church wouldn't change just so it would eventually disappear that much faster. There will probably be, it's kind of like, the church is getting more friendly to gays. And I was like, damn it. It was just when they were probably right on their way out.
Well,
but no, I mean, not really. I do.
Christianity is dying out in the United States.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we're seeing is the last remnant fighting desperately to preserve it.
Oh my, you know what? And I've called what we're seeing the last dying breath or last gasping breath, the corpse flailing around. I swear you and I should have met earlier because we say the same things. We're definitely kindred spirits on a lot of this stuff. Wow.
So it seems.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in third world countries,
yes,
it's on the rise.
Right.
Which is why our ministers were able to go to Africa and spread hate for gays throughout Africa.
Yeah.
Especially Uganda.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean.
Which, before our evangelists went over there, Uganda was the most gay-friendly nation on the planet.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yes, they were the most progressive on the planet, and our Christian ministers went over there and turned it into the most vile, hateful place there is.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wow. And because
I'm
that's
glad that the main guy who was involved in that, and I can't remember his name, but he is going to trial for what he did.
Right. Wow.
And I hope they burn his ass.
Yeah. Jeez. Well, I guess we can go on to something a little bit lighter, maybe. Jesus. I did, and this is an awkward transition, but I did want to ask you about representation in the media because I saw a post on your Facebook wall earlier today, and I was a bit surprised at first until I read it, and I've interviewed enough trans people that I do get it, and I do understand why. But it was a petition to boycott the upcoming Stonewall movie.
Yeah.
And maybe you could explain a little bit to the listeners about why you, of all people who've been advocating so long, would want to boycott a movie about the movement.
Well, the problem is the movie has excised the women of color, the trans women, and transgenders from the whole thing.
Right.
They have turned this into a white guy hero movie when the white guy was getting the crap beat out of him by the cops.
Right.
And the trans women stood up and saved his ass.
Well, we can't have that. We can't have a man getting beat up and a bunch of women coming to help him. That's not going to fly in America. That's not marketable.
You know,
oh, my God.
My big issue with this is I have, even among my gay friends, I've heard a consistent whitewashing of the trans involvement in the gay community in the fight for rights.
Right.
And we have been in the fight from the beginning, fighting for gay rights.
Yes. Yes.
Because gay rights are so intertwined with trans rights. Yeah. That it just makes sense.
And it is worth mentioning that so many times, and especially I think so many of my guests have pointed at one time or another to the HRC as an example of this. So many times the trans community has been that very first bargaining chip that's thrown under the bus to get a gay ordinance passed. So you guys have not only supported it, but you've gotten very little out of it, and you've sort of taken it on the chin for them along the way.
Quite a few times.
To be fair, yeah. So Hollywood finally tries to throw the LGBT community a bone, and they get it totally wrong.
Yeah, and the first riot for gay and lesbian and trans rights was actually a few years earlier than Stonewall at the Compton riots in California, where trans people staged a sit-in.
Oh, okay.
And
didn't know that.
Then we initiated the Stonewall riots, and we've been there all along, and I keep hearing over and over again, well, where have y'all been? Y'all haven't done anything.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my God. Yeah.
In 93, the Houston Gay Pride president banned trans people and drag queens from their parade because we make them look bad.
Right. And you know what? I mean, what sucks about that is, in a purely numerical sense, it's a numbers game, it's politics, and you know the electorate. Yeah. There is a bitter and unfortunate truth strategically to what he's saying. If you're talking about, we have to accomplish something. But that's a very cold comfort to anyone who's being told, oh yeah, you know what, you're not welcome here. You know, even among the oppressed, you're not welcome. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, and the thing is organizations like HRC really are looking to get gay rights. Right. They're not looking for equal rights. Yeah. That rather than wanting equality for everyone, they've just wanted to join the elite who have all the privileges in this country.
Right, right.
And to do that, they have to adopt all of the belief systems of that wealthy elite that runs things.
Yep.
They can only deviate in one aspect, that they are gay.
Yeah.
They have to be identical every other way. And I approach the rights movement from the perspective of we shouldn't have this pedestal that people are standing on with special privileges.
Right.
I don't want to join them. I want to knock it down.
Right.
And bring them down to where they belong with rights the same as everyone else has.
Well, that's okay. Now, I think that's the first thing you said that I kind of question, because I guess I think of, I mean, there's no question. There is straight privilege, white privilege, male privilege, cis privilege. There's no question about it. And it's all that stuff that we take for granted, that when we see it being given to somebody else, we say, oh my God, they're being given this unfair advantage. It's like, no, they're being given the same thing you've had all along. You just took it for granted. And that's privilege. That's what privilege is. But I guess, like, I don't think of it, and this applies to anything I just mentioned, whether it be race or gender, sexuality, etc. I never think of it as a loss of privilege. I always think of it as privilege is how everybody should be treated. I like how I've been treated. I think everybody should be treated this way. And I guess as I hear how you phrase it,
but they're not.
Well, no, but I mean, like, what's the end goal? Is the end goal to bring the top down or to bring the bottom up?
Well, the end goal is to find a realistic medium and bring everybody together.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Everyone should have basic rights.
Right.
To get a job, worship the way they want to.
Yep.
Get health care, and, all the other rights that are promised us, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yep. Absolutely.
On an equal footing.
Absolutely.
I know that when I stopped living as a male and started living as a female, I instantly lost all my male privilege.
Right.
And I'm aware of what I gave up because I gave it up.
Right. You've seen that. It's a unique perspective on the issue, that's for sure.
And the people who have had it all their lives, they really can't even be aware of what it is they have unless they give it up.
Right. Right.
Because it's so pervasive.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's supported by everyone. Women support the male privilege as much as the men do.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and that was always like, I've read stories of people who are feminist and women's rights activists now who they were reading things that they had written or said in high school and college, and they were actually saying specifically that they weren't feminists, they hated feminists and all that, and they realized they were saying that to appeal to men. They realized that, they were in again, this is not in the more enlightened areas. This would be in, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, so tend to be southern, rural, more Republican areas. But they were thinking that they had to support male privilege in order to appeal to the boys or the young men that they were pursuing or that wanted to pursue them. Yeah, and that is heartbreaking to me to hear that.
They weren't going to survive.
Yeah, and it's just, to me, I'm like, again, I'm kind of if 10 out of 10 people are saying something, I'm saying the opposite. I don't care what it is. And my wife's kind of the same way. And it is just, it's just soul crushing to hear somebody saying that. It's great that they came to that realization, but then so many others just still continue throughout their lives to support it. Oh my God. Oh my God. So now, as you talk about healthcare, you talk about jobs, you talk about housing. So yeah, it's a little bit early to talk about it, but who's your party? Who's your pick for the nomination? Who's your vote for president at this point?
Well, I'm an independent.
Okay.
I hate the Democrats almost as much as the Republicans. I'm currently registered as a Green, but I'm going to change so I can vote in the primary. I vote for effect, not for party.
Okay. So you would change to register as an independent or as a Democrat or what?
I am supporting Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, okay. Okay.
He's running on a Democratic ticket, but he's an independent Democratic socialist, and really represents what the Democratic Party was in the 60s.
Okay. In the late 60s. In the late 60s.
I would say mid-60s.
Well, let's say post-1964, post-Civil Rights Act.
Yeah, okay, I'll go along with that.
Yeah, you go pre-Civil Rights Act. The Democrats stood for something very differently nationwide.
Well, I didn't pay any attention to politics before then. I was just a kid.
I know. I researched this stuff because I'm kind of just like sick that way. But you look at presidential electoral maps. If you throw out the national landslides, like Roosevelt and Reagan and Nixon and Johnson, throw all the national landslides and look at it's just ridiculous how Democratic the South was and how Republican the Northeast was prior to 1964, and then from 1968 on, it was like a mirror image. Suddenly, the Northeast is like the Democratic stronghold, and the Southeast is Republican, straight through. And the only Democrats they ever supported were themselves Southerners, basically. Johnson, Carter, and Clinton were the only ones who could win any of those states.
And I think that we're about to see another flip-flop of the party's policies, where the Democrats become the conservatives and the Republicans become the liberals again. I think that's about to happen, because the Democratic Party has been pulled so far to the right.
Yes. And that started with Bill Clinton.
The Democrats are sitting on Nixonian politics.
Yeah.
And so many Republicans bailed out of the Republican Party and joined the Democrats.
Right.
That all that's left are the extremist Tea Party type.
Right. So it renders, I mean, we're seeing the Republican Party, I think, becoming like the Whigs. I mean, it's going to become, I mean, come on, Donald Trump being taken seriously, if that doesn't alone render you irrelevant, I don't know what does. I mean, if he wins the nomination for the Republicans, they're irrelevant as a party. They're done.
Well, I'm afraid that if he wins, he could win.
No one ever went broke betting on the stupidity of America. That's for sure.
That's right. And, I mean, Hillary Clinton, I wouldn't vote on her on a bet.
Okay. Well, wait a second. So, but let's say that she's the nominee. I mean, because right now, although Sanders has been building a lot of momentum, there's been a lot of other elections in which early momentum petered out once this primary started, once the rubber met the road, so to speak. Let's say that the conventional wisdom wins out, Hillary Clinton wins, and of course we all know what the clown car of the Republicans looks like. I mean, it doesn't even matter who wins, really. I mean, pick one at random. It doesn't matter, all the same. Do you vote Hillary? Do you vote third party? Do you vote Republican?
I'll vote third party.
And what would you say to someone like me, then, who says that that's a vote for the Republicans? Because I do believe that. Given our system, it's not that I like it, it's just that given our system, I'm a very practical guy, I say that's a vote for Ted Cruz or whoever wins,
I would say that is a vote for what America deserves. If they nominate Hillary Clinton, they deserve a Republican president, because they're going to have one anyway.
Wow. Okay, I mean, you know what? I know I'm not going to convince you otherwise, and I'm not really going to try, because I don't necessarily think you're wrong. I'm voting for Hillary mainly because I'm looking at the opposition, and I'm still saying, you know what? That's slightly less terrifying, but it's a vote of, I will be the first to admit.
Less terrifying because she is socially progressive and has become that way since she became a politician.
Yes.
She really wasn't before.
Well, I think of, to me, my first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth consideration of Supreme Court nominations, and I'm just saying, you know what, in the next 8 years, let's say, because potentially you could be talking 2 terms for whoever's there. Incumbents are tough to defeat unless they're really incompetent. I mean, George Bush got reelected, so anything can happen.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may not even, live 8 more years, let alone serve 8 more years. Antonin Scalia is also the next oldest and longest serving people. And I'm saying, so who do you want to replace the most liberal and most conservative judge on the Supreme Court? I'm not suggesting Hillary Clinton's picture would be perfect.
I would want a liberal to do that.
Yeah.
However, we have become so deeply nationally socialist. They keep calling it separatism, but that's what Mussolini called it.
Okay. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, the corporations have taken over.
We have a national socialist society now.
Sure. The corporations have taken over.
We have nationalized the labor in this country.
Yep.
That's why the jobs are gone.
Yep.
And the people in this country are the commodities now. We're not the consumers.
Right.
So both parties are national socialists, and we know where that winds up.
Well,
it doesn't matter if you're a pretty demagogue or an ugly.
Right.
You still wind up with a totalitarian government controlled by corporations.
Yeah. Well,
and when the Trans-Pacific Partnership goes into effect, our Supreme Court will no longer matter.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
All the issues are going to go to the World Court.
Oh, thank God somebody realizes this. Oh my God, I was discussing this very issue with Dee Dee Friedberg about a month ago. She's a journalist up in New England, 20 years in the, more than that, many decades in the business. And we were arguing about the TPP, and she's saying that it was a good thing, and she couldn't believe the Democrats blocked Obama on it and all that. And I'm arguing as you are. I'm basically saying the ISDS section, basically, the one that says, oh yeah, we can override your national courts that are, answerable to the politicians who are answerable to the people, and having this world court, as you speak of, who basically, the judge, jury, and lawyers for both sides are essentially the same people. They come from the same group. They're not, they don't represent the people. They don't represent the government. Both sides are represented by the companies. And even the country is represented by essentially a lawyer who the week before and the week after is going to be representing corporations.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the ISDS, in my opinion, needs to be struck out of every treaty. We need a constitutional amendment that basically says, no, it will never happen in any treaty, that our Supreme Court shall remain supreme. And I don't care, even if it's bad, even if it ends up a right-wing Supreme Court, I still want our system to be what settles disputes in America, certainly not a system run by international corporations answering to nobody.
Well, from my perspective, our Constitution was thrown out, took stock and barrel with the big law they passed right after 9/11.
The Patriot Act, you mean?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got that. I think of, if I had to think of the big three, You've got Gore v. Bush, or Bush v. Gore, where essentially the Supreme Court took it upon themselves to appoint a president, which is unprecedented and overturned completely. You've got, as you mentioned, you've got the Patriot Act, which is still in effect. It's not the Patriot Act anymore. It's, whatever, the USA Freedom Act or whatever. We're going to rebrand it. Yeah. But, this is what Edward Snowden, etc., revealed. And, I mean, Edward Snowden, I have a hard time calling him either a hero or a villain, because I think it's a very complex issue, but certainly I cannot defend that which he exposed. I mean, I can't defend it as constitutional. It's not. It clearly isn't.
He exposed stuff that he needs to go to jail for. However, he's a whistleblower. So,
and that's how I view it, and that's why I say no, he doesn't need to go to jail for. It's an unfortunate.
And we have made it illegal to do that.
Right.
It's illegal to blow the whistle in this country anymore.
Certainly on the government.
It just makes me so furious.
Yeah. I guess, but I look at it, and again, I'm a practical guy. I know that one of those two parties is going to win. I know that I am an order of magnitude more fearful of what one would do rather than the other, again, vis-a-vis the Supreme Court. And I think of, I don't think Hillary's going to name liberals. I think Secretary Clinton would name moderates, in the Kagan and so, just as Barack Obama did, just as President Obama has. Yeah. In fact, you could argue that the court has moved to the right under Obama because he replaced two liberals with two moderates. Now, they're still voting in a liberal bloc, but they're not liberals, they are moderates. And I can see Clinton nominating two moderates, but even though, Ginsburg will be replaced by a moderate, to the chance to replace Scalia with a moderate, as opposed to replacing Scalia with somebody who's to the right of Scalia, I can't
picture that.
Well, no, but I mean, teabaggers. Think of the teabaggers.
So far right, he needs to be in a loony bin.
Well, yeah, I know, but then again, look at our public discourse. Look at the Tea Party. Look at the Republican ticket.
It's all driven by Alec and Cox.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's an entire show right there. And we have run over. You know what? As I was trying to say earlier, Secretary Clinton has my support, not out of any idealistic enthusiasm, but rather as a matter of pragmatic compromise. And I will admit,
I'm hoping if they don't nominate Sanders, that Biden is in there and wins over her.
See, I just say, would you rather see Hillary Clinton win or Joe Biden lose? That's the way I see it. I don't think anyone other than
Biden strikes me as honestly more liberal than she is.
Oh, hell yeah. No question. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm just afraid that Democratic voters aren't really that Democrat anymore.
Yeah.
They're just too conservative.
Well, I think if you really have a true collapse of the Republican Party, I mean, a true where it becomes in number the lunatic fringe that it is now, and people actually realize who represents what, and you do have sort of a solidly, but a right-center Democrat Party, not a hard right. I don't think it's going to become the new Tea Party, but it's going to become the old Republican Party. Then I could see a left wing or a liberal party or a democratic socialist party being viable. But I just see, I look at the numbers, I look at the map, and I say, you know what? I'd still rather see Hillary Clinton win than Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden or Martin O'Malley lose, you know? And I'm thinking of another President Bush, to say that Jeb Bush is the least offensive by far on the entire ticket. I mean, that's something. Oh, God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just it. I think of the alternative. I look at the alternative and I say, you know what? I've never been a fan of Hillary Clinton. I've never been a fan of Bill Clinton, honestly, for different reasons over the course of my life. But I've never been a fan of either of them. But I'm looking at the alternative and I'm looking at, do the Democrats really have a viable person? I mean, I'd love to believe in Bernie Sanders. I really do. And I mean, I suppose he might have my primary vote. Although I got to tell you, if it's split 50-50, I'm going to have to think long and hard because, again, I'd rather have Hillary Clinton win than Bernie Sanders lose. That's what it comes down to, unfortunately. And that's a shitty way to vote. I admit, that's a shitty way to vote. I really think
if Sanders can win the nomination, that he will win the presidency because he has public support.
He does, and he has public support from moderate Republicans. There are Republicans and libertarians who are okay with him.
We can pick up that 5% crossover vote.
That's true. That is true. And it's just, God. I don't know.
That's where all elections hinge, is on that 5%.
Right.
That could swing both ways.
Yeah. And I've asked a couple people now, and I've gotten different answers. You already know if Sanders wins the nomination, you can hear the Republican attack as now it's going to be socialist, over and over and over again. But I don't think, personally, I agree with the one guest I had, Tara Snover, who said, I don't think it's going to play as well as it would have even 5 or 10 years ago. Now, the station manager, Barbara Sobel, said she thinks it still will. She still thinks she's a Clinton booster, and she says, you know what? Nobody with the word socialist attached to them is going to win in this country. I don't know if she's right or wrong. I know it's a risk. I am kind of leaning towards what Tara was saying, though, that I don't think it will play as well as it used to.
Well, if I were managing a campaign, I would say, if Democrats come out and slam socialists, then I would say, I'm a democratic socialist, that's a national socialist, which kind do you want?
Right, so hang that word right back around, and that is a good, you know what?
Yeah.
That might be the way they do it. Yeah, turn the Nazi implication around, basically. Yeah. You know, the right wants to invoke, they invoke, you know what, it's crazy how often people in the media now will invoke Nazis. It's like the people on Fox News, they think they're like in the YouTube comment section or something. That used to be something that only happened in like bar arguments and internet spats, and you're hearing people on the news compare Obama to a Nazi or whatever. Like, what are you?
Yeah, and they have no clue what a Nazi is.
Oh, well, because they've never looked in the mirror, apparently, you know. Let's be honest.
And they haven't studied the history.
Well, I mean, they don't even know American history. I mean, it's.
Oh, of course not. and you don't get that anymore.
Oh, God. Well, and that's, you know, you've got the continued privatization of public education, you know. Yeah. I mean, and education is one of my big things that, well, certainly religion has. Well, I won't say that. Religion can be taught in a theology classroom. Intelligent design can be taught in a philosophy room, and evolution needs to be taught in a science classroom. You teach each subject where it belongs, but religion, has no place in public education.
No, it doesn't.
And I don't think corporate money does. I mean, I don't even think corporate, You know what happens? It doesn't start out. It starts out as companies giving something to the schools, and everybody says it's a great thing. But then when the schools start to turn against the corporatists, when the corporatists want to flex their muscle, it's, oh, do you want to lose this free thing we're giving you? And suddenly it's not such a good deal. And that's, I almost think like you just have to, I don't know, it's kind of silly to say, okay, we're going to ban donations to schools or something like that. It seems like that's a crazy way to go, but it's like, yeah, it's not so much that they're making money on, although that's what it leads to. Now with the charter schools and everything else, and in these for-profit secondary schools, they are making money off of education now, and I don't think there should be a profit motive in that.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
My thinking is, and I saw this when they first started talking about voucher systems years ago.
Yeah.
Is when a private school takes a government voucher, then by law, that charter school has to follow all the same standards that goes with that money. And that means you can't teach religion in the private school. But nobody's enforcing that. They're pretending like that part of it doesn't.
Right. I just go back to, what happened to the free market? What happened to saying, okay, you can have a private school, but if it can't survive on its own like any other business, it's going to fail. What happened
to the free market?
I know. And that's what it's ridiculous when the right acts like they're the big defenders of the free market. No, they're not. Do you know what a free market looks like? It doesn't look like billionaires dominating, controlling everything. That's not capitalism.
It looks like, GM would have gone bankrupt and died.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I'm in Michigan.
And there would have been a public auction of whatever they had.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Michigan, so I'm a little biased on that one. I'm going to say the GM bailout was good for two reasons. One, it spirals out. If that company disappears, the damage that is done to, first of all, the suppliers, and then all of the other auto companies that they supply, who now no longer have any money to make their parts. I think that was good. And in the end, it didn't.
The bailout was bad. I'm just saying, in a true free market, it would have been gone.
Well, true, but I guess I'm thinking more along the lines of, if a private school fails and goes out, there's a public school system that is provided by the government. If GM fails and all their tier ones and the rest of the auto industry with them, the government's not going to start making cars for everyone, it's kind of, there is no alternative to that. And at the end of the day, it didn't cost anything. The cost was negligible at the end of the day.
Cars.
Well, yeah, in theory, but I think the problem.
In reality,
but we're down to 3 auto companies where once there was over 100. If there were still over 100, you wouldn't have what we had.
That's because of the government interfering in the market,
right,
and promoting those 3 companies and allowing them to take over all the other companies.
Right. Well, the antitrust laws, laws in this country they're a joke. They might as well not even exist. Because when was the last time a merger was shot down? Yeah. And if I'm going to vote for a Republican, Teddy Roosevelt. Let's bring back Let's bring back the big trust buster,
Yeah.
I think that was the last Republican who was worth a damn. I don't have a personal problem with Eisenhower, let's say, but he didn't really, I will go so far as to say he didn't really accomplish anything either. The last Republican that actually accomplished anything good was probably Teddy Roosevelt, honestly. I think you got to go back that far, turn of the century. God. Well, hey, you know what? It was great talking to you. I appreciate you coming on the show. I had a lot of fun, and we definitely are seeing eye to eye on a lot of things. Although I was glad we could at least break on one thing. If that comes down to presidential politics, so be it. But it's great talking to you. I really appreciate you taking your time.
And I don't mind being disagreeable on 1 or 2 points.
But yeah, I really appreciate you taking your time. It's fun talking to you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
And let me know if you ever want to come back on. You're definitely always welcome. Thanks a lot.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, have a good evening.
You too.
I'd like to thank Pamela for coming on the program. And as always, if you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard here tonight or suggestions for future shows, guests, or topics, please drop me an email at niceguy9418@usa.com. You can friend me on Facebook at Eddie Cabot, or you can leave a message on my blog at eddiecabot.blogspot.com. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your evening here on Rainbow Radio.